It started with gas station sushi. That's not a metaphor. I mean it literally. I was standing in line at the Pump Mart on a Thursday night, debating whether I could justify spending $8 on California rolls that probably had more preservatives than flavor. I'd just come off a 14-hour double shift. My uniform still smelled like fryer grease, and my feet ached so badly they felt numb. That was the kind of week I was having. The kind of year, honestly. Rent was behind. My car needed new brakes. And my boss had just hinted that seasonal hours might be cutting back. I grabbed the sushi box anyway. Regret it later, I told myself, and saw the stack of lottery tickets near the register. I usually ignored them. But something about the silence in that moment, the flickering light, the drone of the cooler, the tired way the cashier looked at me, just made me do it. "Give me one of those," I said, tapping the bright green one. The $10 scratcher. The guy raised an eyebrow, probably wondering why someone with a prepaid debit card and coupons in her wallet was splurging on lottery tickets. I didn't owe him an explanation. Didn't owe anyone anything, really. Isn't that ironic? I scratched the ticket on my steering wheel in the parking lot with the corner of an old library card. The numbers blurred at first. I thought maybe I was more tired than I realized. But after blinking twice, my heart stopped. $20,000. I reread it, then double-checked the instructions, then reread it again. My fingers trembled. My mouth felt dry. For a full minute I stared at the card, waiting for some invisible hand to punch through the windshield and say, "Gotcha." But it was real. I scanned the barcode 3 times on the lottery app. My heart was pounding so hard I felt dizzy. The prize was legit. I was now a multimillionaire. The old me would have screamed, called my brother, texted my mother even if she didn't answer. Posted a meme. Something. But you know what I did? I sat there in my dusty, half-broken Corolla and got incredibly, inexplicably quiet. Because the moment I saw the money, I didn't see opportunity. I saw faces. Every family gathering where I brought baked chicken while my cousins brought gifts wrapped in Bloomingdale's bags. Every dinner where I was the punchline because I worked hourly. Every time I was cut off mid-sentence by someone with an MBA and a wine buzz. The memory that stuck out the most was 2 years prior, when I asked my sister to co-sign a student loan. Her face went cold, lip curled just enough to make me feel microscopic. She claimed it wasn't personal, just a financial risk. I never asked again. Now I had more than any of them. More than all of them combined, probably. But I didn't want to tell them. I didn't want to hear the fake congratulations, feel the sudden warmth from people who used to forget my birthday. I wanted to see who they really were. So I made a decision right then, under the flickering mobile station lights. I wasn't going to tell anyone. Not yet. Maybe not ever. I walked into my apartment 10 minutes later, where the air conditioner groaned like a dying animal. I laid the ticket carefully under an old gardening book I knew no one would open, locked my bedroom door, and stared at the ceiling. What does it tell you that wealth didn't make me feel safe? That the first thing I did with generational changing fortune was hide it like a secret wound? But here's what I knew. The people closest to you show their true colors when they think you have nothing left to give. I'd been invisible before, background noise to holiday feasts and graduation photos. I wondered what I might see if I stayed that way a little longer. And now I had the time, the tools, and the money to do exactly that. What they didn't know was that their tests had already begun. It's funny, the way families can smile at you while slowly breaking you down year after year. I used to think I was just being sensitive. That maybe I was overthinking the way my mom would glance at my shoes before giving me a tight-lipped hug. Or how my brother Derek always found a way to toss around phrases like upward mobility when I was in the room. Like he needed to assure everyone that I wasn't contagious. But as I got older, I stopped excusing it. We weren't poor growing up, at least not more than any regular middle-class family. But when Dad died, and Mom remarried a man who loved golf more than us, everything shifted. Derek went to private school. I stayed in public. Rachel, my older sister, got tuition help for college. I got told to get a job. That's when it started. The comments. Subtle at first. At Rachel's wedding, I wore a $40 dress I'd carefully tailored myself. I was proud of it, but at the reception, I heard my aunt say, "She's got a good heart, just doesn't care much for presentation." I smiled, pretended I didn't hear, but I did. They had a way of doing that, turning my effort into embarrassment, my survival into shame. I remember Thanksgiving 3 years ago. I brought sweet potatoes with homemade marshmallow topping. Derek brought a catered tray wrapped in silver foil, and my dish barely got touched. When I sat down to eat, someone had already taken my place card seat. I ended up on the folding chair in the corner with the toddlers. But the worst moment, the one etched in acid, was my birthday. It was a group celebration since my birthday was near my cousin Lydia's. We're only 4 days apart. She'd just gotten into NYU, and I had just gotten laid off. We did the usual family thing, gathered in Mom's backyard with her lemon bars and folding tables. I remember Lydia glowing in a designer outfit, her new iPhone in hand. Everyone clapped for her. We opened gifts side by side. Lydia tore into hers first. A MacBook, gifted from the entire family. Shiny, custom engraved. They acted like Oprah had just walked in. I got polite claps, then it was my turn. I smiled, probably too wide, trying not to seem bitter. Inside the gift bag, a used mug that read, "But first coffee," and a pair of striped socks from Dollar Tree. Price tag still on. From Rachel. I remember looking up and meeting her eyes, and she didn't even flinch. Just sipped her wine. That moment stripped everything away. Not just the gift or the comparison, it was the message. I wasn't valuable. I wasn't someone they bet on. I was tolerated, a side character in someone else's big day, and the worst part, I've always shown up for them. I helped Derek's wife find a job after she left teaching. I designed invites for Rachel's baby shower because she didn't want to pay a graphic designer. I gave when I barely had. But in this family, kindness doesn't get you status. Money does. Titles do. Prestige. They called me selfless, when what they really meant was easily disposable. Looking back now, with $20 million tucked away, and none of them knowing, I can't help but feel the shift. They always look down on me, but they have no idea how far down they're about to be looking when the tables turn. I gave myself 1 week to prepare. I combed through legal protocols, contacted the state lottery department through a lawyer, who I paid in full with my new friend's business funds, in case anyone went snooping, and secured everything anonymously. Once the money was locked behind my private trust and the digital paper trail was buried, I began what I now call the soft rollout of truth. Not the full truth, just the test. The exposure, to see them as they truly were, and to let them show themselves. I started with Rachel, always polished, always preaching tough love, like it was some kind of spiritual wisdom. I kept it light. "Hey Rach," I texted. "Sorry to bug you. I just got let go from work. Think I could crash in your guest room for a couple nights just to get my head straight?" Left on red. 12 hours later, she replied, "Ugh, I feel for you, but we've got the nanny's cousin staying this week." Timing's awful. Hope you figure it out. The nanny's cousin. Right. Next up was Derek, the golden boy of the family. We hadn't really talked since he brushed off my last invite to lunch, but I gave him the benefit of the doubt. I phrased it like a soft ask. "Hey, could I borrow like $100 this week? Gotta cover utilities and groceries. Promise I'll get it back to you." It took him nearly 2 days to respond. When he finally did, his answer was as bland and condescending as you might expect. "Hey, sorry. Money's really tight right now with the market and Liam's new school. Maybe try a personal loan? I can send links." "A personal loan? From my brother." I shook my head, then tried Aunt Marlene. She was always the one who wished I called more. Always. Pulled me aside at reunions to whisper about how messed up the family was. I told her I was thinking about driving Uber, full-time since I couldn't find remote work. She responded immediately. "That's a smart move, honey. Good hustle. Happy to pray for you." That word, pray, made me want to scream. I wasn't asking anyone for a fortune. I wasn't trying to leak hints about money or test who'd flatter me in hopes of a payout. I wasn't even asking for love. Just help, something basic. A meal, a couch, a fraction of the compassion I'd shown them my whole life. Instead, I got excuses, silence, or worse. Lukewarm platitudes designed to end the conversation as quickly as possible. Even my mom. She didn't ignore me completely, but I could hear the tension in her voice. "Well, I wish you had saved better," she said. "This is why I always told you not to eat out so much." I hadn't eaten out in 2 months. But I just mumbled yeah and let her finish her lecture. I'd heard it 100 times. How my setbacks were always moral issues in disguise. If I struggled, it was because I hadn't done life properly. Then, just to push the test further, I made one last ask. I posted in the family group chat that a friend desperately needed last-minute childcare so she wouldn't lose her shift at the hospital. Could anyone spare 2 hours to watch her 6-year-old? No reply. Not one. 26 hours later, Lydia, the cousin with the MacBook, posted a meme about how burnt out she was from having to help a friend pack for a whole 2 hours. I stared at the screen and felt something icy form in my chest. Not sadness. Not even rage. Clarity. I wasn't being paranoid all these years. I wasn't emotionally immature or oversensitive like they love to imply. I was accurate, and now I had proof. The people I would have bled dry to support couldn't even lift a finger when I asked for crumbs. They didn't just dismiss me when I was invisible. They dismissed me when I made myself vulnerable, and now, everything still looked the same on the surface. My texts were still dry, my calls still ignored, the group chat still buzzing, with brunch photos while I was supposedly on the edge of eviction. What? They didn't know, what none of them knew was that I could have bought their brunch spots 10 times over and owned the real estate. Their lives ran on, but I didn't want to flex. I wanted truth. And now I had it. Their final exam had just ended, and I was the only one who passed. I almost didn't reach back out to Rachel again. Part of me already knew how it would go. But the other part, some stubborn, loyal, younger sibling side of me, still held on to a thread. Maybe if I just explained more. Maybe if I made her feel needed, she'd soften. So, 2 days after she left my message on read, I called her. She picked up on the 3rd ring, sounding distracted. In the background, I could hear her kids yelling and the faint hum of a reality show. "Make it quick," she said. "It's been a long day." My chest tightened, but I kept my voice steady. "Rachel, I'm in a tight spot. I lost my job. I'm behind on rent, and I just need a place to crash for a few days while I figure things out." I paused. "I don't want to stay in a shelter." There was a silence so long I almost thought the call had dropped. Then she sighed. Not a concerned sigh, an annoyed one. "You know what?" she said. "I'm just going to say it because no one else will. You always do this." I blinked. "Do what?" She didn't miss a beat. "Play the victim. You disappear for months, then come running back when you screw something up. It's always some drama with you. You're 34 years old and still flailing. Maybe it's time to grow up and stop leeching off everyone else's stability." I opened my mouth to respond, but nothing came out. There was a pounding in my ears. A strange, surreal detachment, as if I was floating next to myself, watching the scene from far away. She kept going. "I love you, okay? But loving you doesn't mean sheltering you from your life choices. Maybe this is exactly what you need to finally figure your stuff out. Loving me." That phrase sat like broken glass in my throat. She had no idea how many nights I stayed up crying after babysitting her kids, struggling to pay my bills while making. Sure, they had Christmas gifts I couldn't afford, wrapped with glittery bows. No idea how many Saturday nights I spent editing her resume for corporate promotions I'd never be considered for. No idea how her words, dismissive, clinical, and brutal, had just torn open every scar I'd buried for over a decade. But I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just said, "Okay, got it," and hung up. I sat in silence for a solid 6 minutes. That kind of silence that hurts in your bones. I wasn't shocked by what she said. I was shocked by how easy it was for her to say it. Effortless, like brushing lint off a sweater. That call broke me. because it wasn't just about the rejection. It was the final confirmation that the bond I believed in wasn't mutual, that the love I handed out so freely, year after year, came with fine print I never signed. I remembered being 14, crying in the school nurse's office after getting my first C, and Rachel telling me, "You'll never be the smart one. You're just good with feelings." I laughed then, like I always did, like it didn't hurt. More memories came rushing in, things I'd shoved into dusty corners of my mind. The time she told her friends I was adopted because I looked kind of off. The time she said I should marry rich because I was too soft for a real career. And I'd forgiven it all. Every jab, every condescending laugh. Because that's what I was trained to do. Minimize my pain to maintain the relationship. But that call was the last straw. Not because I needed to stay in her guest room, but because I needed, just once, to be treated like family when I had nothing to offer. Something inside me shut down that day. Not broken in a way that needed fixing, but broken in a way that rebuilt differently. Stronger, colder, sharper. She hung up thinking she'd taught me a lesson. What she didn't realize was, she did, but not the one she intended. Just when I started to believe I might actually be alone in this world, Sophia called me out of nowhere. We hadn't spoken in over a year, maybe more. I saw her occasionally on Instagram, smiling with her dog, baking banana bread from scratch, always writing something poetic under photos of overcast skies. We were never best friends, but during college, she was my safe space. The kind of person you could cry in front of without feeling like it would be used against you later. So when my phone lit up with her name, I almost didn't answer. I wasn't in the mood to pretend I was okay, but something told me to pick up. She didn't even say hello. "I had a dream about you," she said with her usual dramatic flair. "You were walking alone in the snow and I was calling you from a window." I laughed. Or half laughed, half choked. Okay, that's weirdly accurate. And just like that, she sensed it. "What's going on?" she asked, her voice soft. I told her everything. Well, almost everything. I left out the part where I had more money than God sitting in a private account. But the rest spilled out like a cracked dam. Being laid off, the silence from my family, the phone call with Rachel that still made my chest ache. She didn't gasp. Didn't defend them. Didn't force motivational quotes down my throat. She just said, "Do you need a place to stay?" I froze. Wait, what? My roommate moved out last month. It's not a palace, but it's clean and quiet. The bed's already made. I can pick you up tonight. She didn't ask why my family wasn't helping. She didn't need me to perform worthiness. I remember sitting on the edge of my bed after the call, heart pounding, not because I was afraid, but because I couldn't remember the last time I felt safe. When I arrived at her place, she opened the door wearing pajamas and held out a mug of tea, like it was the most natural thing in the world. "I got your favorite, peach and honey," she said. That night, we sat on her floor, sharing takeout and stories from our 20s. She didn't ask a single invasive question. She let me be exactly what I was. Fragile and guarded. Tired and raw. In a world where everyone needed a reason to offer help, Sophia asked for none. She didn't care about my resume, my mistakes, or how long I planned to stay. She simply sat beside me like she had back in undergrad, when we'd file late-night essays in silence and eat cereal straight from the box. She didn't see a failure or a burden or someone who needed fixing. She saw me. And maybe that's why she's the only one I couldn't lie to forever. Maybe that's why. Later, months later, when it all came tumbling out, when the truth hit the floor like a dropped wine glass, Sophia didn't flinch, but I'll get to that. For now, all you need to know is, while my family slammed doors, Sophia opened one without question. And the air inside that apartment? It felt like the first clean breath I'd taken in years. I should have said no. When Lydia texted me about her birthday dinner, I hesitated. It didn't feel like an invitation, more like an obligation, one of those add them to the group so no one can say we didn't kind of invites. I almost ignored it, but something in me said go. Maybe it was pride. Maybe spite. Maybe I wanted to prove to myself I could still show up and hold my head high, even after the week I'd had. I wore a black blouse from a thrift store that I'd ironed twice, and jeans that were beginning to fade at the knees. Sophia had offered to lend me something nicer, maybe even take me out shopping, but I declined. I didn't want to owe anyone, not even her. Not even in kindness. The dinner was at a mid-tier Italian place in the nicer part of town. The kind of place with dim lighting, overpriced cocktails, and waitstaff who looked like part-time actors. When I walked in, the energy shifted like it always did. Subtle, but undeniably present. People glanced, smiled too hard, then looked back at their plates. I took a deep breath and made my way to the open seat at the far end of the table. Lydia barely looked up. "Oh, hey, you made it." She didn't offer a hug, just returned to her conversation, sliding her new designer purse off the table like it deserved more space than I did. 10 minutes in, the first comment came from Derek. I had just finished ordering a glass of water when he leaned over to Rachel and said, not even trying to whisper, "She finally made it. Guess gas prices went down this week." They both laughed. Rachel even clinked her glass against his like they were toasting to my misfortune. I smiled. That fake, press-it-deep kind of smile. The kind you learn at 13 when relatives say things like, "You're filling out nicely," and no one corrects them. Conversation moved on, to real estate prices, Lydia's new marketing promotion, and when Derek might finally qualify for branch partner. My name didn't come up once, until the food arrived. As the server reached over with a plate of pasta, their arm bumped a filled wine glass. The contents splashed directly onto my lap, deep red, soaking fast. "Oh God, I'm so sorry," the waiter sputtered, grabbing napkins. "No, it's okay, really," I said quickly, trying to dab it before the stain set. But it was useless. My jeans, already fading and fragile, were now soaked and stained like a murder scene. And then came the voice, from across the table. I heard Aunt Viv, never loud, always mezzo-judgmental, mutter to her neighbor with a low snort. Shame. Not like she can afford new pants anyway. The woman beside her hid a laugh behind her wine glass. Something cracked quietly inside me. Not a scream. Not a dramatic exit. Just a soft break. Like when a heart hardens into something it wasn't meant to be. No one defended me. No one said, "Hey, that's not fair," or "Come on, be nice." They just kept eating. Even the waiter, red wine arm, retreated quickly, almost like he didn't want to be associated with my table. I finished the meal in silence, trying to shrink into myself. Every sound felt louder after that, the scrape of a knife against ceramic, the popping of laughter I wasn't part of, the clink of expensive bracelets when someone reached for bread. I left early. Said I had to work in the morning. Another lie they'd believe. As I walked back to the bus stop, wine still wet against my thighs, I didn't cry. I didn't storm out or cause a scene, although God knows I could have. Instead, I stood on the curb in my stained jeans and held on to one clear, pulsing truth. They had just laughed at someone they believed was at rock bottom. What they didn't know was, I was never at the bottom. No, I was just quietly collecting receipts. What they didn't know, what made that night almost poetic in its cruelty, was that every flickering candle at Lydia's dinner, each lavender balloon, the designer cake table backdrop she posed in front of like it was the VMAs, was paid for by me. Every single thing. A week before the dinner, Lydia's longtime event planner had posted in a freelancer group I sometimes browsed out of habit, asking for urgent help with sourcing decorations last minute. The client had good taste, no clue what anything costs, and champagne expectations on a sparkling water budget. I chuckled when I saw the name attached. Lydia. Curious, I reached out under an alias. Said I was a silent donor interested in covering a few birthday events for working women who deserve to be celebrated as a form of giving back. She bought it without question. Over the next few days, I covered every invoice. Delivery trucks, imported floral setups, monogrammed party favors, and even a custom bottle service arrangement at the end of the dinner they planned to surprise her with. They gushed. They bragged. Lydia posted a carousel of photos the morning after, hashtagging Grateful Queen and luxury on a low budget. She even thanked the universe for blessing her with family who always shows up. I laughed out loud when I saw that part. I had paid for the gift too. That sleek beige mini iPad, engraved with her initials. Her boyfriend had picked it from their shared wish list, clearly never aware that the invoice had been routed through my foundation, one I'd created just weeks prior that looked charitable, but operated mostly as a funnel. One of many little tools I'd picked up since becoming a millionaire 7 times over. They called me useless, broke, a freeloader. That night, they made a joke out of my clothes, my car, my life, and all the while, they were sitting at a table I financed like a silent investor in their delusions. I can't explain the satisfaction I felt. Not the kind of glee people assume comes with revenge, but something deeper. Like I had cracked the code of who they really were. Like I got to sit in the center of their performance and whisper, "Scene." The audacity of it. It didn't sting anymore. If anything, it made everything feel clear for the first time in years. They didn't remember how I held Lydia's hair back at prom when she drank too much, or how I loaned Rachel money for grad school with 0 conditions attached, or how I babysat Derek's twins for free every weekend, the first year they moved back. None of that mattered, because now, on paper, I had nothing, which made me easy to ignore, easier to insult. But what if they knew? What if Lydia found out the anonymous donor she toasted over tiramisu was the same cousin everyone treated like an afterthought? What if Rachel found out her sharp little whispers about how my wine-soaked jeans, embarrassed the family, were made while eating food I had financed? What if Derek knew that every brag he'd made at the table about his investments sounded like crumbs next to what I was quietly building? I could have told them. Could have stood up in the middle of the dinner and made a declaration that would have dropped jaws onto white tablecloths, but I didn't, because it was never about proving my worth to them. It was about watching them prove theirs when they thought I had nothing, and they failed. So as they posted selfies beneath string lights I paid for, sipping cocktails on chairs I rented, I walked home without making a scene. But something had shifted. I was done observing. It was time to start planning. By the end of that week, I knew exactly what I needed to do. Observing them had run its course. They had spoken, through silence, through backhanded jokes, through outright rejection. And I had listened, quietly collecting each wound like a receipt. Now it was time to rewrite the story. Not for them, for me. The first move was simple. I bought a company, not just any company, a boutique creative agency that had been struggling for months due to bad leadership. I remembered the place well because Sophia once interned there during college and always said it could have been amazing if run by someone who actually gave a damn. So I hired a real manager, fixed its debt, rebranded it with clean lines and a sharp new voice, all through a shell corporation so detached and professionally structured, it would take a team of lawyers armed with divine intervention to link it to me. Within 3 weeks, we had 5 new clients, 2 of whom were referrals from Sophia herself, though she had no idea the new owner she kept praising was the same friend sleeping in her guest room. Next, I invested in Sophia's dream, a little artisan bakery she'd sketched on napkins for years, but could never get off the ground. I funded it through 2 layers of discretionary grants, gave her full creative control, and watched her light up when she found the deposit sitting in her business account. She screamed when the lease came through, cried when she opened the delivery of brand new bronze mixing bowls. She deserved every bit of it and never once thought to ask who was behind the scenes. It hit me then. Kindness doesn't question what it doesn't understand. It just says thank you. That made my decision to keep her in the loop later. An easy one. But the pièce de résistance? The property. See, Derek had been eyeing this stunning Lakeview development for a year. He talked about it endlessly at family dinners, claimed it was the missing piece to his growing real estate portfolio. But asking price was high, and his investors wouldn't commit without a liquidity guarantee. They pulled out. Deal fell apart. Derek blamed interest rates. I closed on that same property 2 days later. Full cash. No mortgage. Through a group of buyers whose names were fictional but backed by mine. The contract didn't bear my signature. It bore only the name of a trust that sounded like it belonged to someone with 5 generations of Wall Street pedigree. And here's the most delicious part. Derek still drives by that property once a week. He posted it on his Instagram story the same day the final deed was signed. They don't know what they're doing with this land. I would have transformed it. Shame. If only he knew. Piece by piece, I was reshaping the world they thought they ruled. But not with revenge. Revenge explodes. Legacies evolve quietly, like vines growing over forgotten statues. I wasn't lashing out. I was taking root. The world they laughed in, I was rewiring it from the inside. And still, no one had a clue. It didn't start with a bang. It started with a whisper. A news alert here. A stock market dip there. Layoffs rolling through tech sectors like dominoes. The kind of shift most people think won't touch them. Until it does. Then came the texts. Rachel messaged me first. The same Rachel who accused me of leeching. The same sister who said I needed to learn responsibility. Her tone was different now. Softer. Forced casual. Hey, just checking in. How have you been? I keep meaning to call. I didn't respond. 3 days later, another text. So random, but do you know of anyone renting out a room? Rent in our area's insane. Need something short-term, just while we regroup. I stared at the bubble, remembering how she wouldn't let me crash for one night when I said I had nowhere to go. Regroup, what? A polished word for we're drowning. Then, Derek called. I let it go to voicemail. Hey, it's been a minute. I know we haven't talked much, but I could really use your advice. Pulled a lot of money out at the wrong time. Long story short, things are kind of tight right now. Don't worry, I'm not asking for a handout. Just maybe someone to talk to? Interesting. When I wasn't worth talking to, silence was easy. Now, apparently I have insight. A week later, he emailed me a link to a GoFundMe for an emergency financial cushion. Same guy who once said, poor people just don't plan right. His crypto portfolio evaporated. His backup investments froze. The lake property? His dream flip? He tried to revisit negotiations, only to be told the buyer had closed with full cash and zero contingencies. He has no idea that buyer was me. Then Lydia. Poor Lydia, cousin Golden Girl. She posted a video in tears. Her influencer deals had dried up. Brands paused their campaigns. She was adjusting expectations. Translation: living off credit, downsizing fast, and finally noticing what inflation feels like when you pay full price. Hey babe, I might be going through your city. Let me know if I can crash a night or two. I miss our bond. Bond? I haven't had a conversation with her since she laughed about my wine-stained jeans. It was surreal, honestly, watching them all scramble, each one who'd ignored my calls. Mocked me. Looked down at my hand-me-down clothes and my small talk like it was contagious. Now they were waving white flags through polite emojis. Carefully avoiding any past context, like I might have forgotten their rewrites of me. But I hadn't forgotten anything. They just finally saw me where I had always been. Neutral, useful only if I had something to give. And now, they all thought I might have something left. Some small loan, some floor to sleep on, some imaginary contact I could call for them. It was like watching a reversal in real time. A power shift so quiet, so clean, I didn't even have to gloat. The silence was the gloat. You know what they all had in common? Each of them said the same thing in some form. Just until things stabilize. Temporarily. I hate asking. What they really hated was who they were asking. They had no idea I was the one now holding the pen to rewrite their stories. No idea that everything they thought I never had, I had in abundance. And I had waited, patiently, silently, long enough to mean it when I said, I'll think about it. And for once, I let my silence say more than my generosity ever could. Retribution didn't need fire, just timing. Of course, it came down to a house. A distant aunt. We called her Aunt Miriam, but I barely remember her face. Passed away quietly in her sleep. She had no kids, no spouse, and apparently no real plan for her estate. Just a creaky old Victorian home left untouched since the 80s, sitting on a now prime piece of land that made my family foam at the mouth like vultures over a carcass. The emails started rolling in within days of the notice. Group threads. Statements like, Per her wishes, to be divided among family. With so many legal caveats, no one knew what it actually meant. That's when the accusations started. Who had been there for Miriam? Who deserved more? Whose name was mentioned in passing 10 years ago during brunch? The kicker? They invited me to the estate mediation, not because I was a potential heir, God no, but because they needed a neutral party to make it look civil. A courtesy, a nod. The meeting happened at a law office downtown. Dark wood walls, stale coffee, quiet tension. I walked in wearing a simple blazer and slacks. Clean, sharp, intentional. Rachel was already there, perched like a hawk over a manila folder. Derek arrived next, talking on a Bluetooth earpiece like someone important was actually listening. Lydia showed up last, late, sunglasses still on, sipping a $7 iced matcha like it was a courtroom prop. The mediator explained the process. The property wasn't willed to anyone directly, so it would go to public auction, unless collectively decided otherwise. That's when the chaos began. Derek proposed they split it and turn it into a rental property for family income. Lydia wanted to renovate and make it her personal studio/content house. Rachel insisted Miriam had once told her she'd always have a roof over her head. Then the gloves came off. Snide comments became raised voices. Old grudges resurfaced. Lydia called Rachel controlling. Rachel called Derek greedy. Derek clapped back with a years-old dig about Lydia's tax issues. I watched. Quiet. Calm. Miles away from the screaming mouths at the other end of the table. Until Rachel turned to me, loud enough for the room. Well, clearly you don't have the money to even bid if it does go to auction. So maybe just stay out of it, okay? She didn't laugh. None of them did. Because in their eyes she was right. Why wouldn't she be? I'd been the broke one their entire lives. I'd asked for help just weeks ago, remember? Bumming couches. Borrowing cash. Living small, so obviously I could never think big. In that brutal silence, I felt every pair of eyes land on me, waiting for me to apologize for taking up a chair in the room. I smiled. Something in me felt still. The kind of stillness that comes right before a lightning strike, because what they didn't know, what none of them even suspected, was that I already owned the property next door, and by this time tomorrow, I'd own this house too.